Hey yo everyone, I just want to say that I finished making this one months ago, but I was just putting on hold and for some reason I didn't release it because Shadowlands came out and I have to do the new content, learn the new meta and all, so this will continue my video game review series. I'll try to roll these ones out at Friday hopefully, and hope you enjoy this one. Do you know that good game from the early 2010s? Nope. Not that one. Still not that one. I mean, they're great, but what I want to talk about today is... Let me look it up. What? What's going on? I mean... Even Bastion made it to the list.
Gohan, get out here!
I'm sorry, we're a little high up here. What did he just say, Mr. Piccolo?
I think he just said, Gohan! Out of the entire list, you pick him! He wasn't even on the list! Yamcha was on the list!
Okay, that's exactly why I want to make this video. To talk about this underrated gem. The game that made me appreciate grinding in RPGs. The game that made me enjoy killing larger than life bosses and then getting epic purple loots. The game that essentially got me into World of Warcraft 2 and its Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. And boy, have I been meaning to talk about this. And I have no idea why it's not talked about like at all, so I feel like it's criminally underrated. So KOA Reckoning was released in early 2012, a game developed by Big Huge Games. I find this name weird then and still do now. And 38 Studios, published by EA. Wait, what? EA? Yeah, remember the time when EA actually published good games? Killy remembers. Well, things in the game sales were looking actually good. They managed to rack 1.2 million sales even in the first 90 days. With all this, the developers still, 38 Studios went bankrupt. I don't know everything behind the scenes, but it was looking grim for the game company immediately, in which it includes its future sequels and all other potential marketing. Look, they were even gonna work on an MMO. Not saying it would be a WoW killer, but I was so confident it would be great and I would have played the hell out of it. There's still an alpha video on YouTube, by the way. If you're curious, feel free to look it up. So it broke my 13-year-old heart knowing that it won't have a sequel. No news or anything came then except the 2 DLC releases. And then, after a long while, at 2018, THQ Nordic bought the properties. Gosh, I'm such a sucker for companies that went bankrupt and underrated games, and it shows. So, they made and released an HD remaster of it last year, and it's the best time to pick it up and play it. Why should you play, you might ask? Well, for starters, the artwork was directed by no other than one of my favorite Spider-Man artists, the creator of Spawn, Todd McFarlane, which explains the stunning and immersive aesthetics all around, and the melodious and beautiful music was composed by Grant Kirkhope, who at that time wasn't that popular, but he became one of the artists who composed the soundtrack for, say, World of Warcraft Shadowlands. So, the studios that created them weren't well known at this, and this was supposed to be their first big stepping stone of a project. So they were relatively fresh, but from this project that they had the passion and their hearts were in the right place. So, let me talk about this game. Like every typical RPG, you have to create your character. So you have 4 playable races that are Elmain, the normal civilized humans, the Dokalfar, they're the dark elves, and Josalfar, the light elves, and Varani, the nomadic humans. They have all their special traits, as you would expect. And you start off as a fateless one, but you can choose your fate as you progress through the game. I'll get back into this. Let's get into the combat section first. So combat. What can I say? The combat is pretty fluid, flows well, fast paced, and depending upon your weapon, it's either slow or fast. You have a dodge and block button, which both feels good to press, and the game incentivizes you to parry more since they feel so rewarding. I will go even as far as to say this game had the potential to be the game with the best parry mechanics. Like Darksiders 3, the game goes into slow-mo mode after a successful parry instead of a dodge. Only problem in how it would be even miles better is if you could counter attack with a huge crit from either your main hand or spells like, Darksiders 3. There's an upgrade for weapons where you can attack after your main dodge, and this makes no sense why it isn't baked into the parry instead, since it's just gonna feel better in general. So the game gets even more fun if you tune up the difficulty. Now playing the remastered again, I am playing through it on the highest difficulty, and man, it's such a whole new experience. You are punished for your incompetence and rewarded for playing well. For example, if you face melee enemies, then your best bet is to use ranged weapons, but it's always not the case. Same for casters, if you face them, your best bet is to play fast melee weapons, but still that's not always the case. So every spec has their own shield as well. There are 3 types of shields. So you won't be a mage carrying heavily plated shields, but rather talisman, and if you're a rogue you'll carry bucklers, and a warrior spec, well, the plate ones with him. One thing about what made the combat feel so good is that you can swap between your primary and secondary weapon at any time, and on top of that, swap between your spells, which makes the playstyle a whole lot diverse, and there is not a definitive way of playing it. The boss fights also always feel unique. Okay, maybe not always. Well, either way, they felt cinematic and had high stakes, and the way you finish them off looks straight out of a movie scene. So there's an added mechanic called the Reckoning mode. It's basically your power-up form, kind of like the demon forms in Darksiders. Basically, you slow down time and hit like a truck, and end it with a beautiful finisher with a tad bit of QTE, that increases your XP. This mode is great, and you'll find yourself using it against strong pack of enemies rather than bosses though, because the bosses have a lot of mechanics where they are immune to damage, so it's pretty hit or miss. Okay, we're gonna get into the location section here. The continent where everything happens is called Phalanx, and the maps are huge in scope. There are 5 distinct regions in which the Phalanx are divided into a number of separate regions: the forests of Delentar, the plains of Irathel, the canyon territories of Dityre, the marshes of Chloricon, and the crystal kingdom of Alabastra. And the DLC zones, which looks different too. The Sky Olympus looking area, with the Greek aesthetics and all, with giants. The washed up shore with pirate aesthetics from the Legend of the Dead Kill DLC. So despite having only 2 major continents, you will find yourself in areas that differ a lot from the other. The art team and world designers have done a really good job to give you the open world feel, from gloomy barrens to marsh swamps, from lustrous forests to wastelands, from rocky barrens to dark crystal infested areas. Even the caves are beautiful, but sometimes some are reused, but then again we can almost say that about every RPG and MMO at existence. So either way, exploring and reaching new areas is always a blast in this game. So The normal world it's set in, even without the DLCs, is rich enough and is filled with content. The game gives you incentive to explore, so at least you can unlock fast travels. It awards you XPs, and there are lore zones out in the world that you can interact with, and when you do, it gives you XP and the dialogue or poetry reads out of it every time, and the deliveries for these are so pompously pretentious and I love it. It sounds and plays out like something a literature major would write, so you know the measures of immersion are heightened here.
First, the Pyrrhal tree. Then the shapes of trees and heads and hawks, made by the white caps of the waves before they crashed. Then 1,000 other wonders in my lands have faded, failed, and fallen still. All I know and love is slipping from my grasp.
There are shrines too, which are basically world buffs. They are based on the quote-unquote gods of this world, so based on the shrine of which god it is, the buff switches up accordingly. There are loads of legendary armor sets here too. The legendary being the best quality armor there is, and sets for every class type, and even the combination of all three is here, and you can unlock them through various means, like say exploring, doing quests, some side quests, getting through secret zones, robbing them, and so forth. So which means the game is scattered with secrets to unlock them. And I love how the best set in the game, the Universalist set, needs specific ways to unlock them, and with special efforts too. Even just this section proves the passion behind this. But yes, ultimately, remember the times when you can unlock good armor and weapons by actually playing the game without having to pay them off the cash shop? Yeah, this is one of those games. So entering capital cities are always a blast. The city feels alive, beautiful, and for, let's say, entering the city like Edessa feels like Stormwind. And every city or rested zone have quests to offer, from your typical RPG fetch quests to kill bosses and unique ones. There's loads of them, and it usually feels fresh to do them, or at least doesn't make it feel like a chore in the way they are designed. And maybe because the good combat system is a huge factor here too. Right when you are on the way to your main quest, you are sometimes subjected random NPC encounters that doesn't overlap with your path, and sometimes they give you quests or offer to join their faction. And you know there are factions here you can join, by the way, and we'll get to that later on. So even if it does throw you off your main path, pursuing these quests always feel rewarding, and it never feels like a drag or an artificial game lengthener, as you would get sweet gear upgrades or gold or a sweet chunk of XP. So the level cap here isn't that high, it's just level 40, which means that after every level up you get 3 skill points, and it always feels like a big power level surge when it happens. So NPCs are smart. Okay, smart is an overstatement probably. Let's just say they have common sense and they help you if you are encountering an enemy. And enemies don't share a hive mind, meaning different types of them don't just attack you. They fight among themselves too, if they are not of the same kind. For example, wolves and ogres, spiders and sprites, instead of them just collectively attacking you as one unit, so it's pretty good. Only issue I have, actually I don't, but some of you might, is that there are no mounts. That's right. Since I'm assuming most of you are accustomed to mounts being available to RPGs, you won't be expecting it, so this is an FYI. The problem you will have too, and I kind of do as well, is that there are too many invisible walls, and with your inability to jump, sometimes it feels just straight up bad that you can't close these small gaps between with your mobility. Does it make the game worse though? Don't think so. It's something in the lines of just a minor inconvenience. So the factions, I want to talk about the factions. The game has 6 different factions, with which the Fateless one, you, can join. So each faction has its own story, quests and characters. Some offer houses that you can own, other promise treasures untold. So these factions have their own capital city, or at least hub, which is aesthetically and thematically different from one another. For example, the Warsworn, they're usually located and chill around their keeps and are all about war and honor. Meanwhile, the Travelers, the Thieves Guild, who are kind of like Robin Hood, their hub is more grounded and low-key in a way. And the Scholia Arcana, the students of Arcana and Magic, kind of like Hogwarts. Well, I won't go too in-depth with the other factions. There are others such as the likes of House of Valor, Ballads, Sorrows, and the one coming with the DLC named Gravehall. So into the weapons section. So there are loads of weapon types and each one differs from each other. They range from wands, staves, great swords, all the way to Feyblades. What are Feyblades, you might ask? Basically Illidan swords or warglaives used by elves. Yes, I think this is one of the main reasons in my youth why the game immediately hooked me. They made warglaives a weapon to be usable by the players before Blizzard did in World of Warcraft Legion. So the only instance where Warcraft did first as a usable was the Burning Crusade expansion, where the final raid boss has a very low chance to drop. And moreover, people who have it are the only low percentile of players, so yeah. Being able to equip Feyblades here is such a cool feature for 13-year-old me. And still is, honestly. So I will go more in depth on the weapon types. There are staves, scepters, and chakrams for the typical mage class, and daggers, bows, Feyblades for the typical rogue class, and great swords, hammers, longswords for the typical warrior spec. And the big upside is you can use these weapons on other specs too without them bleeding onto each other, giving you a disadvantage, but rather complement each other by the way the specializations and classes are Destinies, as the game would put it. So speaking of Destinies, let's talk about them in an in-depth sense here, kind of. So Destinies, just like any fantasy RPG game, you are entitled to specializations. Might for the strength or warrior spec, finesse or for the agility or rogue spec, and sorcery for the caster or mage. But you are not locked into one, not at all. You can get creative, have a mixture of all of them. If you want the rogue caster, it's here. A stealth warrior is available too. A hybrid of rogue hunter, it's here too. And if you want a mixture of all of them, it's available as well. So yeah, based on the spec you can play the game how you like. So the stealth is optional, memes are always relevant, and I want to close this section by saying it's not like those RPGs or MMOs that give you loads of choices but will always be locked into one set of talents. No, not at all. So skills, basically the game has quality of life skills that you can upgrade point by point. As you level up, you get 1 point per level, and the skills you use it on is totally up to you. Based on the race you're using, you have baseline advantage to certain aspects of the game. It's not game breaking, but more of a convenience, and on every tree there's a passive bonus too. When it comes to alchemy, it increases your skills to create potions, and each one better than the last through the upgrades. And the passive being better chances to harvest materials. At blacksmithing, well, I don't have much to add. It's basically your ability to craft gear, and the higher you get, the stronger gear you can make. And the passive is, it increases the potency of your repair kits. Oh, gears can be destroyed or broken, by the way, so. And detect hidden is a huge convenience skill, which gives you more insight to the minimaps. The higher the skill, the bigger the convenience, like showing you hidden doors, traps, lore stones, and the passive being a flat increase in the gold you find in the open world. Dispelling is basically, it gives your ability to open enchanted chests. Lockpicking as well, it's in the name. Mercantile is your merchant skill. It increases the rate in which you sell items, and you can recover some gold from directly destroying your items. Persuasion is, well, some dialogues have a third option that can benefit you if done right. Some can amount to a solid ton of gold, sometimes epic items, and so on. Sagecraft is basically the ability to craft gems, and the higher the better. Stealth is, well, increases your chance to be hidden. Don't need to go in depth there. So yeah, the skill ups are basically conveniences and since you can't max them all, so it's up to you to choose which convenience you like. Alright, so the meat of the section here, the plot. So it's not a plot breakdown, I won't get in too deep into it, but well, the plot is, as you would expect from a typical RPG story. You start off from nothing, or as the game would put it, the fateless one, as the game would put it, into being the hero that ends up fighting the dragon at its lair. Funny enough, that's actually how it goes, and I love it. This is like, I know, this is cheesy, this is like lots of Superman stories, cheesy done right. So, the cinematics are sometimes dumb though, too many abrupt cuts. 1 minute there's a climatic cutscene with an amazing score in the background. Next it cuts to the next frame with no music. Take a look at this. I did not edit anything in or out of it.
This ends here!
You have two main partners here, and those are totally not Uther, Agard, the Fate Weaver, and the supposed love interest for your character, Ailinshire, the thick white elf who to me looks like Scarlett Johansson then, and she still does to this day, to be honest. She helps you on your path, and she got the similar goal as you. I like how mysterious she is, and you get to know her bit by bit as you progress. Such a shame we can't go full Dragon Age mode and have a romance with her. You know, I'm not really one to simp over video game characters, but this is one I can get behind with. And by getting behind with, I mean, of course. So almost all the quest-giving NPCs and characters from the main story here that you encounter have their own background stories and depth, so it makes the game feel so alive, and I can't stress enough how immersive the game is. So the story revolves around the Truatha, which is the evil faction trying to bring their evil overlord, Tirnoch, in, and you must, in all your power, prevent them to do so. And the progression of the story revolves around you gathering your troops and rallying your allies for the big and final clash with the evil faction. Only issue I have is, maybe because I'm too drawn to grounded stories, is that I hate how the story reveals to us that we were special and we were the chosen one all along. It kind of removes the relatable everyman aspect, you know, the zero to a hero gimmick, so kind of kills the fact that we were just a nobody who eventually got better and better. So yeah, it's kind of nitpicky and it doesn't make the game worse at all anyway, so I recommend you play this game. So why do I recommend it? Well, it's absolutely a great RPG experience, even for people who are new to the genre. It is a solid, rich in detail, finished game, and from the aesthetics to the gameplay, to the systems, to the story, world building, and all the way to the soundtrack, on every nook and cranny of it, you can find that there is passion behind this team of developers and studio. And you can see that they're trying to make the best RPG game they can realistically possibly can make, which is something you don't see a lot these days. So this game has no business being this underrated. It's not even a failure or a bad game. It's not at all within the leagues of games like Andromeda, Anthem, Jump Force, Avengers, the list goes on. It just didn't have the commercial success that it rightfully deserved. So I made this video because I want to put this game out to everyone. And just like the name of the first two quests at the beginning, I want to bring this game out of the darkness into the light.